Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto, Willies. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto, Willies, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the entire United States. And of course, good morning to the world receiving our signals via the magic of the internet, formerly known as ARPANET, created by whom? Created by you, and now controlled by the billionaires, but something that we will be wrestling back to bring back command to democracy. Without further ado, let's move it on to the geniuses in the studio with El Señor Howard Reynolds and Jacques Van Beba.
Oh, I think that Jack should get top billing this morning. How about the geniuses in the control room, Laurel and Hardy?
How you doing, my brothers?
This is another fine mess you've got me into, Stanley.
Yes.
It is Thursday, January the 30th, 2025, at a minute and a half after 6 o'clock in the morning. And good morning to all. And let's see, I don't have anything to add today. I've been wrestling with computers for the last couple of days and winning, fortunately.
Nice.
Egberto, I'm going to ask some of your genius one of these days to write me a program.
All right. Whatever you need, my brother, whatever you need.
Alrighty then. Jack has a half a page of wisdom here, so let's get to that.
All right. Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
I am doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
All right. Okay. This is still fascism.
Oh, no.
Are Americans too spoiled by consumption to resist fascism? Are we too dependent on our tech toys, love of our automobiles and homes that we are going to give fascism a pass? Do we believe we are safe and secure in our homes with our stuff and ignore the fact that our corporations and our government are joined together and are seeking to dominate the world economically and militarily? America, be conscious of the harm you are causing throughout the world, keeping other countries impoverished so we can overdose on stuff.
Oh, Jack, you're describing me, man.
I'm describing most of Americans. I mean,
all of my tech
and it's
toys,
a liability.
All of my tech toys and computers and laptops and all that stuff. However, I do use it for work, so not 99% of that stuff is used to make some money, and I do.
Yeah,
but I don't agree. I think. You have a mind and you think, so I don't think you qualify for what Jack just said, nor does Jack qualify either, because both of you guys are thinkers. But, that is so true. That is so true.
Well, we work here, so we're not getting paid a whole lot of money.
Well, at least you get a few pennies, man.
Well, the lights do stay on at the house and the dog gets fed, so I guess that's okay. The cat complains all the time about not getting fed, but he's 18 years old. He's going to complain about everything.
Ouch. That's a very old cat. But you know what?
Yeah.
Look, let me tell you, Jack, before we jump to Neil, I just want to expand a little bit about Jack because, Jack has a way of teasing me. It's like he wants to get something, you twerk that little knife. But look, Jack is absolutely right. We have to be very careful that there's this concept known as bread and circus. It's the only way monarchies can survive. And what it is that you make sure that people's bellies are full. You give them bread. That's the analogy. You give them bread to keep their stomachs filled, and you give them entertainment. And we get a whole lot of that from Trump right back down to the junk we see on TV. We get entertainment and we get cheap food, relatively speaking, that is. And that makes a lot of people comfortable and allow them to be swayed into many things. And that comfort that you're talking about, Jack, is so real. Are we so comfortable with having stuff that we don't want to bother with all the bad things that those in control will do? And it's something we ought to examine for real. But without further ado, today is Thursday. And if it's Thursday, we know it's the founder of the Houston Democracy Project who sits here with us, El Señor Neil Aquino. Buenos dias, señor. How you doing, Neil?
Oh, good morning, studio. Good morning, Egberto. Good morning, local and global audience. I'm glad we're our audience, streaming audience, can see. I've been reading Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, written now that we mentioned Rome. The abridged version is 1,250 pages.
Ouch.
But I'm reading it. I can read about 20 pages an hour. But the upshot is, if a bad person is introduced on page 150, they're emperor by page 153 and assassinated by page 156. Right. So a lot of it's, but it's more than a chronology. I can see why the book has hung on for 250 years. But many of these, the weakness and softness of the population is a consistent theme of Gibbon's.
Yeah, well, we got to do something about that, and that's why we have groups like the Houston Democracy Project, Indivisible, and Daily Kos, and many. We have a lot of folks out there that are going to make sure that we're not going to go down just going down. We're going to do something about it. But anyway, welcome aboard, Joe from Los Angeles, California, who is on with us this morning. I gather that you're keeping yourself dry. California is interesting. It goes from fire to water. Kind of makes Earth, Wind, and Fire seem relevant again. Anyway, Neil, what's up for today, man?
Well, we have. Let's start just briefly with a local issue, because I think it's important, but then we want to talk about how Donald Trump has demoralized the FAA. But I want to just speak about a blog post I wrote on the Houston Democracy Project blog, HoustonDemocracyProject.com, that at Houston City Council, Tuesday at public comment session, you can comment at 2:00 every Tuesday at council. They talked, a woman, Tammy Rodriguez, a citizen of the community who apparently is active in Gulfton. I don't know her, but she seemed like an excellent citizen, and some of the council people knew her. Asked the mayor and council if HPD was helping with the immigration raids. Mayor Whitmire said no, which I believe. And then the council people talked around. Councilmember Joaquin Martinez, who represents a lot of the East End, has been, I think, the best leader on council for this issue. And at-large Republican council member, and we need to be in the practice of identifying these council members as Democrat or Republican. We keep saying it's nonpartisan, but that's horse hockey. Republican Councilman Reverend Willie Davis went into all how he was working with pastors to ease people's concerns. He was working with Black and Latino pastors to ease people's concerns. Now, he's a Republican. So okay, that may be. I mean, he said that. I don't know that he's dishonest, but he said that easing people's concerns. But I had this question of, well, wait a minute. You're a Republican. You're supporting all this stuff. Have you rebuked Donald Trump? Have you rebuked Dan Patrick? And then Dan Patrick came out with his 40 legislative priorities, right? Each more stupid than the other. And here's number 8, requiring local law enforcement to assist the federal government's deportation efforts. That's what it says.
From Dan Patrick. Yeah.
That is the quote. Senate Bill 8, number 8, requiring local law enforcement to assist the federal government's deportation efforts. Now, what the citizen, Ms. Rodriguez, said, she talked about some civic town halls, anti-crime civic town halls, and they're no longer being as well attended because people are concerned about the
raids,
potential raids. I believe Mayor Whitmire. Mayor Whitmire says he's against the raids. I believe that. And he has criticized Trump as demagogic. I believe him, that that's what he feels. And I believe that HPD is not assisting. But his buddy, Dan Patrick, is trying to, I don't know the specifics, but it clearly says requiring local law enforcement to assist the federal government's deportation efforts. Says that clear as day. So there are 6 Republicans on the 16-member council. Davis, Flickinger, Carter, Peck, Huffman, and Ramirez. Councilwoman Carter, who's elected at large, attended a Get Out the Vote rally with Mattress Mac in October. So that might give you, and she's just quiet, right? She didn't, are you for, so we need to be pressing these folks. We need to be pressing the 6 council Republicans. Do you support what's going on? And I'm going to send my post to Councilmember Davis's office today. But the upshot is, if Councilmember Davis, he's an at-large, one of our 5 at-large council members, there are 11 district. If Councilmember Davis is serious, he can call Dan Patrick. He can lobby his fellow Republicans, the Harris County Legislative District, say, if local police do this, then people are going to be afraid to report serious crimes, and HPD doesn't have the resources for this. So I think we need to politicize council more so. It's a partisan group, and the Republicans need to be accountable for all of this anti-city stuff that we're seeing from the mayor, from the Trump people.
Well, it's interesting because, by the way, what has been Plummer's position?
I watch all of it. I don't know that I've seen. I don't recall a comment.
Okay. I
went in October and I said, you know what? These deportations are coming. Linda Morales from Labor, AFL-CIO, as I recall, went back in March. She's an active figure that people know. She's on our county sports authority. And I went in October. I said, these raids are coming if Trump wins. They stared at me like I had just landed off, the mothership from Jupiter. They just stare at you and there's no comment. Councilmember Joaquin Martinez held a Know Your Rights town hall about 10 days ago. And he got some lawyers from. So I appreciate it. And I'm not asking these people, the ask is so minimal. I'm not asking that these people risk prosecution. I'm not asking that they shield people from ICE. I'm saying just hold a town hall, right? Just hold a Know Your Rights event. And last summer, it was August, 4 council members, Martinez, Castillo, Plummer, and Alcorn held a Zoom town hall that was well attended about wanting a tax increase for some of the money we've lost from the storms. And I mentioned their names because they should be rewarded for having the courage to do it. They could hold a Zoom town hall where people could participate anonymously, wouldn't be exposed to ICE or to the law, whatever. There's so many creative things they could do. They could distribute flyers. They're able to go door to door and knock when they're running for office. They could go door to door and knock and put a leaflet where people didn't even have to interact. There's so many different and creative things that they could do. And we know here in Harris County, we keep hearing about the value of immigration, the value of our diverse communities. But when the rubber hits the road, our electeds really haven't been present.
Now, look, our immigration system is broken. There's no doubt about that. Everybody says it. Very few people have the courage to do something about it. We have Lee. First of all, let me welcome Joe from LA. We have Lee, the beer cat. I am not sure. Lee, where are you from? I think you're here in Houston. We have Eric Hayes in the chat as well from Atascocita, Kingwood. Now, Lee, the beer cat says, is Neil against getting rid of killers and drug dealers? And before you answer, I want to answer. Let me just say, Lee, the beer cat. It's amazing to me how easy it is for some to simply buy the line that somehow immigrants, specifically these undocumented immigrants, are coming over to the United States just to be drug dealers and killers and all of that. It just doesn't make any sense. And for people to put that in your mind and for you to so readily believe. Austin area. Well, thank you for being here, Lee Beercat. Now, for you to believe that, let me tell you, there are millions of undocumented workers in the United States of America. It's a reflection of a broken immigration system. It's also a reflection of United States policy, specifically in Latin America. I know they don't ask of American citizenry to think about what our corporations and policies are doing overseas and how that affects migration to the United States. But it's something, if we want to be honest about it and be moral about it, we would think about. And for those who sit back and say, well, these guys should just come over here and follow the rules. Well, you know what? The rules doesn't give them a chance to migrate as the natural order of migration, given the policies that we have in overseas to do. And I always ask us to be humble. I ask us to be humble, specifically because how we started as a country. Nobody asked us when Jamestown was created, when Plymouth Rock was inhabited. Nobody said, where are your papers? Instead, these natives, for all practical purposes, said, we have our open hands. And we know what they did with what was happening to the open hands. But these folks that are coming over here, they just want a job. And you know what they've done for us? They've actually made our economy stronger. Yes, I know it's not all documented, but they made our economy stronger. They also pay taxes that they will never recover, which means they've made our Social Security more robust. And also, they have made life worth living. I mean, I just love all that different diversity in foods, Haitian foods, Mexican food, Honduran food. When I was in DC, I really enjoyed having some Honduran food from the Atlantic coast, from West Indians and from Honduras. Look, we can look at things in two ways. We can look at it from the hateful part of view, or we can look at it from the solutions point of view and the love point of view. I choose the latter. Neil, go ahead.
So if I want to make sure people are able to contact, if you go to HoustonTX.gov, HoustonTX.gov, Houston City Council is there, and there's pictures of them, their contact information. If you go to their pages, there's maps of the district. There's if you poke around, you can punch in your address. And I just encourage you, authoritarianism will require a local infrastructure. It will require someone to implement these Project 2025 and offer political support. So please interact. And if you're in Galena Park, Pasadena, Conroe, wherever you are across the nation with our national audience, please contact your local government. I'll just say, Selena Gomez made a statement concerned about the raids and what she had to pull because of nastiness. And Ted Cruz put out a tweet, saying, why does Hollywood support, I won't even use the terms he used, but, implying that these people were criminals, right? So that he immediately leapt to just defining, these people as criminals. And Mr. Bearcat, I hope my hometown is Cincinnati. I appreciate Mr. Bearcat being involved, Lee Bearcat. I hope you're not a Cincinnati Bearcat with those views, or I urge you to reflect on that.
It's always easy. Hate is easy, right? Hate is easy. You can always find something to hate in somebody. But the thing about it is, if we change the way we think, and again, remember, like I said, most of these people are coming over here just for a job and to enrich their lives. And in enriching their lives, they enrich ours. Please remember that. Yeah. Don't let hate rule. Please don't let hate rule. That is what they need. Look, the only way our plutocracy survives, the only way they can continue to take advantage of the American people is if hate wins. You know what they fear the most? All of us getting along. Remember that. That's the biggest fear, that we all get along. And because if we all get along, we start to get together and figure out who are the ones that are screwing us. I repeat that every time, all of the times. Anyway, we have a caller. And by the way, folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738, extension number 2. And let's go to Brother Harry. I haven't heard from Harry in a while. Harry, I hope your brother is doing just fine. Talk to me.
My brother is doing as fine as he can do. He's got to get some more meds. He's a little bit ornery about that, but we're staying on top of it. I stay on them. We kind of have some heated discussions about family, and sometimes he just talking about, Harry, worry about yourself. You're all now. Don't worry about me. I just say, Alan, look, you are family. I have to worry about you.
And that's why you're a good guy. But tell me why you call him. That's why you're a good guy.
Exactly.
Talk to me.
Exactly. Good morning to Howard. Good morning to Jack. Good morning, Neil Aquino. And I'll comment on some of the stuff that Neil Aquino and what you just said, Egberto, about the undocumented immigrant. But what I want to start off talking about is the last few days, I have been following this memo. We rescinded what the Trump administration rescinded because he's in violation of the Impound Control Act of 1974, where a president has to give 30-day notice for these programs, these grant loans that he was trying to freeze, and the judge put a temporary injunction, but now they're backing away from that. I'm listening to the Daily, and I'm listening to Houston Matters on NPR. They've been covering all this, listening to Democracy Now! On KPFT, and there was another show I was listening to. And this is Chuck Schumer blasted the president yesterday, saying this is one of the worst things that he could do. And as they were saying in the Houston area on Houston Matters, he would have affected a lot of programs. But yeah, with this, this thing would have, if this thing go, I don't think they're going to give up on it, but this thing would affect, it would affect the universities, Meal on Wheels, let's see, DEI programs, which I talked about with Michael Woodson yesterday. There are several stores that are DEI that are scaling back their DEI, and I am just not going to shop at those stores. I'm listening to Al Sharpton doing what Dr. King would have done, hit those people in the pocketbook. You don't want people of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You don't have to shop at a Walmart or an Amazon or you don't have to buy stuff from John Deere, places like that, or Target. But you can shop at an Apple. You can shop at a HEB, places like that are at Microsoft, because they are sticking in they're digging in, saying, look, diversity, equity, inclusion. We have that. It's important. And I like what some of the callers said on Michael Woodson's show yesterday, particularly Anthony, when he was saying, look, it is not reverse discrimination. They had the Great Society and these DEI programs to help minorities. And to comment on what Neil Aquino was saying and what you were saying, Egberto, about these people come here and want a job, unfortunately. And I heard Donald Trump yesterday saying, these criminals that are coming in, we're going to send them down to Guantanamo. I'll bet they can't. They won't be able to get out of there killing our citizens. And he laughed about it. And what this is really about is what Neil Aquino said last Thursday on this show: the browning of America. If these people look like Donald Trump,
I got it, Harry. I got it. And Harry, I got to go, but thank you very much for your commentary. Very, very.
Let me tell you one thing that.
Go, Neil.
That one thing that's cut. Thank you, Harry, for the kind words in the call. One thing: the $2 million, the federal money is used when the child was killed, Milby's school over on the East End, and the trains. That's federal money. Federal money is being used. Some of the money that Carol Alvarado brought in. Federal money has local implications. There are all sorts of things. I swear there was a list in the Chronicle and I can't find it, but that's just one. The federal money is being used to address the trains on the East End, which are so dangerous and waste so much time. It's all over town what federal money does.
Absolutely. And that goes everywhere. James Clark, welcome to Politics Done Right. James Clark says the following. This is important what he says, and I want to address it. He says, hi, what do you think of FBA, that's the Foundational Black Americans, saying that they agree and support Trump deporting the immigrants? If Trump were to deport all immigrants, would FBA become second-class citizens? Okay, look, let me first say, I don't know who the FBA is. I just looked it up, the Foundational Black Americans, and I haven't had the time to read enough about who they are. But discrimination by anyone against anyone or adapting the policies of anyone that is discriminatory, in my opinion, goes ahead and it defaces you and takes away your morality. Anybody who agrees with a policy that separates families, anybody who agrees with a policy that locks people up in encampment camps like what Trump intends to do at Guantanamo and other places, destroying their humanity. Anybody who supports that, and specifically if people of color who themselves have been enslaved, who themselves have been harmed, support doing that to others, they have no rights. They're immoral, and that's my answer. If what you're saying about the foundational Black Americans, that would be just as well an immoral sect. It's the same concept I use in Israel. I'm not talking about Jewish anything. I'm talking about the Israeli government. What is absolutely a fact, that what's occurring in Palestine is a genocide. I love my Jewish friends. I love my Palestinian friends. Love them all. But what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza is genocide. If you imagine, and this is what's most hurtful, imagine those people that went through the Holocaust, that savagery, that immorality. How do you do that to folks in Palestine? How does the foundational Black Americans support what Trump is doing to our Latin American, our African, our Asian brothers who are just trying to have a life? I am sorry. That is immoral. John, come on in, line 2. John, you're on. Brother John, are you there? Okay, going 1, going 2. All right, John is not there. John,
Egberto.
Yes,
I've watched. I'm treading very lightly on this one. Be interested for you to look up the concept of foundational Black Americans and talk about it. I have seen on TikTok videos that I do look at TikTok.
I love
I've seen
TikTok.
Videos that make an effort to separate Black persons who have been here, trace their origins back to slavery, from folks who came from Africa or the Caribbean. I have wondered about the motives. I'm treading very lightly with this, but I've wondered about the motives.
You don't need to tread lightly, Aquino. Yeah. You've earned the right you've earned the right to communicate, brother. But let me tell you a little bit about that, because I'm well aware of it. There's a group called there are two. I hadn't heard of the Foundational Black Americans, but there's another one called ADAS. African ADAS stands for African Descendants of Americans Descendants of Slaves. Okay, and it's a movement that I once supported. It is supporting reparations, etc., etc., etc. And I am all for reparations, because I believe that there is a mountain change in. I mean, there are people who built their assets on the back of folks. Now, I remember going to one of the meetings at Daily Kos that ADAS was having, and one of the things when I came into the meeting and we're talking, they made a separation between me and Black Americans, right? In other words, they were saying, well, you can be an ally and, help us out, but you are not really a part of ADAS. And it's the same thing that happened to me when I just came to the United States and joined the African American Culture Committee and said I had a few choice things to say. And it was sort of remember, you're from south of the border. You're not one of us. And I spend a hell of a lot of time correcting folks and letting them realize that no Black person in this hemisphere came on a pleasure ship. We were either Spanish slaves, Portuguese slaves, French slaves, English slaves. It was one of the other, but they have the same lineage, right? And so fight at the same job. So my thing was, these groups are suffering the same disease that the enslavers had, and that is to try to create and separate and create dissension among people.
That certainly was the vibe I got.
Power. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a power trip, and I do not support that. I'm a Panamanian brother, Panamanian black dude with an American black wife, right? And one of the things that we know quite well is that, and by the way, and with every ethnicity that forms part of our greater family, every ethnicity forms part of our greater family. And the one thing we know is that those who try to split folks up, they do it for a purpose. And that is to wield power.
And who's paying for it?
You read my mind, man. That's exactly the other thing that I was going to
say. Because I'm looking at a gentleman who wrote a book on the subject. There's a website, FBA, but the gentleman, and I'm looking at his Wikipedia profile, he was a highly vocal about distrust of the COVID-19, whole bunch of stuff. And what you just learn in America, no matter what it is, if they're sowing dissension and you look into it, one or two steps removed from a conservative theory of some kind. And God knows where the funding source is.
Exactly. Anybody that you see trying to split people, there is a reason behind, and that's what Trump knows. Trump is trying to split. He's not only splitting people between races, he's splitting people intraracial. But when this guy came and said, Egberto, what do you think about FBA? The mere fact that FBA has a voice now, and it's talking about Trump, it's one of those power trips. Let me bring Derek into the conversation. Brother Derek, come on in.
Hey, good morning, Egberto. I'm like the caller. Your co-host, you said I'm going to tread lightly on this. No, I don't tread lightly on the truth. Traditionally, inside of the United States, I think we better be very careful on jumping on the jumping board, because there have been traditionally so many whites who have paraded as black people and put their racist views, but they want to use a black face or black puppet to say it.
There you go.
Yes. So I say let's actually do some background on this FBL, because I've never heard of that mess.
Exactly, Derek.
Right.
Derek, you're absolutely right. I hadn't heard of them either. And when I hear stuff like how they pushing themselves, and I just went to their website, right? And their website looked like it was, I'll just say, kind of quickly constructed. But, so you have to be careful of all these things. But I'm glad that you said what you said, Derek.
Right.
Because remember, we did used to have minstrel shows where white people would put their Al Joseph, put all that black makeup and then act like a black person,
Yeah. But you know what, Derek? We've grown out of that. But thank you, man. You have a great day, my brother.
And, that's a great segue, because whiteness will never, as I watch this, they are deporting everyone, okay? The groups that were maybe more likely to vote for Trump, the Venezuela, they are working to deport people from Venezuela. And if you remember, it wasn't long ago that they were saying that all the migrants from Venezuela were victims of Chavez and Maduro. They were linked. They're getting rid of Cubans, right? They've suspended programs. So during the campaign, these Haitian people who certainly are probably some of the excellent workers of Ohio, and whiteness will never accept you. Let me tell you that. And I hope I hope we get a chance to talk about the airplane crash, because that's a perfect example. You can split things, but in the end, whiteness will see you, or a big strain of whiteness will see you no matter what, no matter when you got here.
Exactly. I like when you talk about that, Neil. But let me just tell my brothers and sisters here, and I learned this from another activist, white activist, and they pointed out this, and they said one of the biggest the biggest victims of white supremacy aren't people of color. The biggest victims of white supremacy are the white middle class, the white poor, because they are simply being used as a tool for the very few powerful to be where they are. And Glenn Ryan, welcome to Politics Done Right, as well as James Clark. And let's see who else do we have. And by the way, Glenn, you said, and how long did it take for you to even acknowledge it on this show? I remember you refusing to talk about it on air. Why was that? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So tell me what you're talking about so that I can answer the question specifically, Brother Glenn. And let's go to Bruce. Bruce is on line one. Come on. Line two. Come on in, Bruce. Okay, Bruce will be on in a little bit. Bruce is on. Come on, Bruce.
Yeah, good morning, Egberto. Being that I'm a foodie, you kind of hit a note with me when you talked about all the choices available now. I love it.
I know.
I'm old enough to remember hearing, I'm white. I heard the good old boy arguments about, well, if you start including blacks into everything, it's going to take away from the pie and we'll get less. Well, the opposite is true, of course. When you add more talent in, and what you do is you expand the pie and everybody benefits. Apple pie, its ingredients when they stand alone are nothing. But when you put them together, you got something that's greater than the parts. The whole
Man, I love you, Bruce. Love you, Bruce. You nailed it. Love you, Bruce. You nailed it.
The Mona Lisa is only a few pennies worth of paint. You put it with the canvas and an artist, you got something bigger than the parts. So anyway, that's all I got. I had to say that about the food because I'm a foodie.
Hey, me too, man. There are times we eat every kind of food, and we know every kind of food. But thank you, my brother. You have a great rest of your day, and let's go to Sister Betty. How is Sister Betty doing this morning?
Good morning. We was dog talking, me and Jack. Anyway, we started, like the whites, when we come over and did the Indians, it was like, let's send them and get the Indian out of them. And then it was get the black out of them. And it's whoever you are, get that out of them. Now, Gitmo, he wants to get the blue out of us. It's horrible what he's doing. Trump is a freak, just like he let the other ones out of jail. The freaks, you wouldn't want to see them in the dark alley. Yeah. And
thank you, Betty.
No,
go ahead, Betty. Sorry.
Yeah, they're the type that picks up the dead for the funeral homes. It just makes me so mad. I'm sorry I have to say these things, but that's true. He wants to get the blue out of us. He wants to get the black out of us. He wants to get the Indian out of us. Anything who we are is what he's working at. And anyway, I love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Love you too, girl. Love you too. Let's go to brother. Go ahead.
With the pardoning, NPR has identified dozens of defendants. These are January 6th with prior convictions or pending charges of crimes, including rape, domestic violence, manslaughter, production of child sexual abuse material, and drug trafficking. That's what Mr. Law and Order let out.
And that's his people. Those are the people that support him. That's his people. I hate to tell you that, but folks that are going to draw thesis on this most hallowed ground, folks that are going to do things like that, that's his people. Let's go to Patrick, line number 1. Come on in, Patrick.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, brother. Talk to me.
Hey, I wanted to bring up that I wrote a letter about Terry and nobody got back to me. And I haven't heard what happened to the woman that got drug out of the HISD meeting.
Oh,
what's a give us an update.
Okay. So let me answer that, and I was remiss not to bring it up because I apologize. It was a great win. So her charges were dropped by the district attorney, and I asked people to correspond with the district attorney's office. They did. I know they did. I can say factually they did, and it was important, and it was a great show of citizen power. Thank you so much for bringing it up. Sarah Terrell was arrested at the HIDSD meeting. I think it was 2 weeks ago today. She got just a small verbal confrontation with the board. It escalated within 60 or 90 seconds to an arrest. She was dragged out in handcuffs, 62 years old. They dropped the charges. So thank you so much. And that was a real win for citizen power. People contacted the DA. The DA did hear it, and it's a big deal, big win. Thank you for bringing that up.
Harris County District Attorney Sean Tier is doing his job. That's the reason he was elected, to do what's right by the people who elected him. Nobody at this. We're talking about lawfulness, not lawlessness. We have an HISD that is lawless, and we have the citizenry that is lawful. Continue, Patrick.
I want to switch the subject. The dissension is something that I always like to talk about. And I like to point out that with a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States is sports. And that's somewhere where we see a lot of different races and a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different cultures. And for them to all get along makes rich people more money. So there is no dissent shown between them because they're doing the right thing and they're making people money. But when it comes to workers, the exact opposite is done. They sow dissension amongst us to keep us from teaming up like we would in sports, and they keep us down so that we don't organize, we don't find out which we're all our pay rates are, so we can organize. So I want to point that out. When it suits them, they want us to get along. When it suits them not to get along, we don't get along.
Exactly.
Thirdly, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but thirdly, I want to admit that I actually do agree with Trump on one thing, and that's that we don't. I decided we don't need women in the military, and I also think that we don't need trans or the military. I don't think that military. I don't think that we need straight white men in the military. The way we're posturing with the rest of the world, I don't think we need anybody in this military. We're going to be using it for the wrong thing.
I know that's, Patrick, knowing you so well, I knew that's what you were going to do, Patrick. When you started to talk about women and trans, etc., I'm like, I bet I know where he's going. And you went exactly where I thought you were going. That's a good one, Patrick. Anyway, Patrick, I got a little something to say here, and then I want to bring in Brian, and then I let Neil wrap up with something with the FAA. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. I gave Neil some money last week, too.
All right. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother. You have a great day, and we'll talk at 3. Before I go to Brian, I want to address Brother Glenn Ryan, because he called me out, and he was right to do so. He said, and how long did it take you to speak about that? And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. Then he said, the genocide in Gaza, sorry for vagueness. Type that when you were talking about it. And what he's talking about is earlier on during the war, the Gaza-Israel war, I refused to really spend a lot of time on it. And that was purposeful. The Jewish-Palestinian issue is a very touchy issue. And while I wasn't cowering from doing that, Brother Glenn, the reason as a host, I want to always be responsible with my words. So I don't just off the top of my head, I know how things look, but I also do a lot of consulting with people that I trust and people that I know are well read. And that means both Palestinians and Jewish people that are dear friends of mine. Okay. And I am very careful in how you address these issues about genocide and what people are doing, and separating that from whom are doing it as well. I felt, or I am currently feeling, with the support that I also get from some of my Jewish friends, more secure in the way I speak about that issue. Okay? Forgive me that, I am careful on that, but that's what I think was the responsible thing to do. And that's why I made the statement that I made as well today, or felt comfortable making the statement that I made today. All right. I hope that answers your question. Let's go to Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Okay. Donald Trump won the popular vote. Donald Trump won the Electoral College. I'm going to ask you a question. Is he the president of the United States of America?
Absolutely.
Will you call him the president?
Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Yes, you're absolutely right. Donald Trump is the president. I am not the type that's going to do what the folks on the right did with Biden. Okay? I'm not going to do that. But secondly, let me just tell you now that I accept the results and so forth, I am bringing on Greg Palast. I have to call him up later on today, because Greg Palast have been doing some research on how voter suppression affected the election. And this was done scientifically. And I am going to bring him on with what he has found. But yes, Donald Trump is the president. Anything else you want to ask, Brian?
Yeah. You want to talk about voter suppression? How about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook? You want to talk about that voter suppression?
That had no legal basis whatsoever.
He admitted it himself. He admitted it himself.
Brian?
That the United States government. Yeah. Hey, can I speak, please?
No, because
sir.
No, sir. Let you say respond afterwards.
Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the United States government went in and censored anything negative about Donald Trump. He admitted that himself. That is scientific evidence.
No, that's not scientific evidence. That is actually called hearsay, sir. I mean, at least get your terms correct, my friend.
That's
hearsay.
That came out of his own mouth. No, that came out of his own mouth, man.
Yes, hearsay. Yes.
It came out of his own mouth.
Exactly.
No, that's not hearsay when he admitted it.
No, you said it's scientific. I'm saying that's not scientific, sir. But anyway, look, I got to move on to Neil if that's where we're going to go. You have anything else you want to say, my brother?
No, look it up. Mark Zuckerberg admitted it.
Okay, Brian.
Told him. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, Neil, you and I were talking about the FAA and this crash. And first of all, our hearts goes out and our condolences go out to the 60-odd people on the airplane and the 3 servicemen on the helicopter. I really feel for them and hope that we find out exactly what went wrong so that it doesn't happen again. But as we all know, everything eventually becomes political. And I think that's what Neil is about to do with this crash. So Neil, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, this is an NBC News story from January 24th. This is Donald Trump's approach to airplane safety. 2 paragraphs. On his second day in office, President Trump ordered immediate end to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the Federal Aviation Administration, proclaiming that DEI, this is a quote, penalizes hardworking Americans who want to serve in the FAA but are unable to do so as they lack a requisite disability or skin color. Okay? This is his approach. On top of other executive orders rescinding all DEI, this order, called Keeping Americans Safe in Aviation, came after conservatives put a target on the agency last year in response to an incident where a panel blew off an Alaska airline plane at 16,000 feet. So this is super important to highlight, because what they're saying is, here's what they're telling you. If you are not a white man, you shouldn't be working. they'll be fine if you're working in a so-called, I'm not saying this, a so-called lesser status job or what might be a less paid job. But they are saying that if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're like in Los Angeles, the fire chief, lesbian fire chief, that must be she's a DEI hire. She'd been in the fire department for years and years. Anyone, this stuff is so evil. They're saying anyone who doesn't fit their model of an American should be forced out of the professional, quote unquote, higher status workplace. And then the story, and I encourage people, it's an NBC News story from the 24th. I encourage people to read it because they interview a number of Black pilots, head of Black pilot and aerospace groups that really speak about the pain of all this stuff, that these men and women are skilled professionals. And so you saw where they got rid of Lyndon Johnson's executive order about federal discrimination with vendors. They're using DEI as a cover to purge the workforce. And you remember when the train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, which was a terrible thing and terrible fumes. And no doubt they were blaming Buttigieg and Biden, Transportation Secretary Buttigieg. And I want to be clear that Donald Trump, Donald Trump, his aviation safe, he's got an order called Keeping Americans Safe in Aviation. And he's telling you that the problem in aviation is that non-white people are working in the air traffic control tower, working in the cockpit, and it's awful. And we need to talk about it. And we should not be saying everything's political. I'm sorry we're here, but you know what? Everything's political, and we need to. This is how Donald Trump deals with airline safety, blaming other people.
Let me just tell you something, Neil, and I'm not even going to punch my words. As a white dude, right? Your voice is important because what a lot of people have been doing, and I've noticed this in some of the groups that I'm in, is the way they're trying to activate white guys is to try to make white guys look as if they're under duress, like somehow everybody is after them. That's a trick that's being played right now, and which isn't the case, right? Which there's a phrase that people use is that my freedom. I can't. I'm not even going to try to say it because I can't remember how it goes. But the ascension of others doesn't mean the descension of you. And that is one thing you've understood for decades now. But here's the thing. For anybody who just like to look up things, right? Look up every crash that has happened in the United States, every airline crash in the United States. Please tell me how many people of color were involved in those crashes. For all the things that happen where there are mishaps in these technical types of jobs, try to find how many people of color were involved. But let me just give you another thing. And that, by the way, that is not an attack on those who were unfortunate to have accidents. What that really tells is how few people of color are in those jobs. Otherwise, their statistics would look pretty damn similar. But Lee, we have to get off of this for real. This DEI thing is not only dangerous, but it also is false. And I'm speaking from somebody who, and I'm just saying that I'm going to personalize this a bit. For every job one of the reasons I went solo, that I went on my own after being 5 years in corporate America, it's just being pissed at always having to work twice as hard or having to convince people that I belonged. Folks thought I was a quota hire at NASA. Folks thought I was a quota hire at Daniel, at Dresser, at Lockheed, at all these places, right? That's how many jobs I worked in 5 years, because every time I got pissed, I moved. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine in an organization, she just came out of the blue. She said, I read that one of the reasons Black peoples, and she really meant people of color in general, blood pressure is higher is because their daily living is stressful. But is that true, Egberto? And I told her, yeah, that is actually true. The body manifests itself both internally and externally based on stresses, etc. And those are some of the reasons that you find living every day knowing that you have to watch out is a stressful condition to live permanently. And she teared up and said, my God, I find that so sad. And I could see the feel and the strength in what she had to say. Folks, this DEI stuff is dangerous. And this DEI stuff is stressful for a whole lot of people because it's wrong and it has no merit whatsoever. It's a shame, it's immoral, and it's something that we should get off of sooner than later. We got 2 minutes left, so let me throw it to the studio and then close up for me, Neil. Studio?
Oh, nothing here, Egberto. Another great show. Thank you. And throw it back to Neil. He's probably got more to say than I do.
All right, Neil, close her up for me, Neil.
And I'll just say there are 18,000 pilot jobs opening up each year. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says there are currently 4% Black pilots. Houston Democracy Project, HoustonDemocracyProject.com. There's a daily blog, Houston Democracy Project. And it is so important that we hold local officials accountable. We talked about Councilman Davis. He talked about immigration. He says soothing, calming words. But here's the test, Councilman Davis. Call your Republican buddies who are demagoguing this, harming people, putting people at risk, and tell them, put Houston in front of you, far-right ideologies.
Thank you very much, Neil. Hey, Glenn, we can finish talking about this on the 3:00 show. Check out the 3:00 show and you can call in and I'll tell you why I said what I said. And it wasn't about belittling folks. And Charlie Lee, no more free rides. Don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anybody who gets free rides. Anyway, folks, look, thank you all. Love you all. My name is Egberto. Beforehand, don't forget the rest of the show is at politicsandright.com/newsletter, politicsandright.com/newsletter. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics and Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Support for this show, Politics and Right, comes from politicsandright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willies.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point